Hi friends, I'm Beth with the National Portrait Gallery and I want to welcome you to another introducing story time where we introduce you to the people and stories that have shaped our history. And today is special because we're celebrating a birthday. Happy birthday, Smithsonian! What is the Smithsonian, you might ask? Well, let's explore this portrait of James Smithson. And as we learn a little bit about him, we'll also talk about what the Smithsonian is, how it was created, and why it exists. First, what clues do you see in this portrait to help us understand who James Smithson was? He is a young man in this portrait. Don't be fooled by the white hair. This was painted about 130 years ago, and a lot of men wore wigs back then. He's sitting pretty casually in this simple wooden chair. He has his fingers in the middle of a book, like we've just interrupted him while he was reading. What might he be reading? A lot of times in art, an artist will include a book as a clue to us that the person in the portrait is smart. And to further this idea that James Smithson is intelligent, we can look at his clothing for some clues. Now, he's wearing the standard clothing that rich men wore about 230 years ago, but over his clothes, he has the cap and robes of a scholar. A scholar is someone who goes to school and learns a lot. Maybe you are a scholar. James Smithson is in his scholarly clothing, surrounded by trees and plants and old buildings made out of white marble bricks. This is a pretty popular style when he was alive. Maybe it's meant to suggest that he studied at someplace old, read old books. In fact, James Smithson did study at someplace old. He studied at a school in England called Oxford. He particularly loved to learn about plants and rocks. He spent his whole life studying rocks, making inventions, writing down his ideas because he loved to learn and he wanted other people to have a chance to learn too. That is why when he died, he sent money, or he had money sent to the United States, a place he'd never been, because he wanted the United States government in Washington, D.C. to form something called the Smithsonian Institution. Now, we're going to go back to this term because it's important. It's why we're celebrating today. But James Smithson said he wanted there to be a Smithsonian Institution, or what he described as the increase and diffusion of knowledge. That's a lot of big words. So let's go through it slowly. Increase means to make more of something, to make it bigger, and diffusion, which means to spread something out, of knowledge. So the increase of knowledge comes through learning, and the diffusion of knowledge comes through teaching and sharing. And 175 years ago, that is why the Smithsonian Institution was created. A lot of people, when they think of the Smithsonian Institution, they think of museums. And there are a lot of museums. But it's not just one place. The Smithsonian Institution is actually the world's largest museum, education, and research organization. Some of the museums include the National Portrait Gallery, where I work, the Air and Space Museum, the National Museum of American History, the National Museum of the American Indian, and a lot more. The National Zoo is part of the Smithsonian Institution. You can also learn about global cultures through folklife festivals. You can learn about plants through the Smithsonian Gardens. You can learn about world music through the Smithsonian Folkways albums. There's really something for everyone to enjoy. So James Smithson gave the United States the inspiration and the money, and 175 years ago, the Smithsonian Institution was created, and generations of scholars have enjoyed learning and teaching with us ever since, including you. So thank you. Thank you to James Smithson. Happy birthday, Smithsonian. You don't look a day over 100. Thank you again for joining us for another Introducing Storytime, where we introduce you to the people that have shaped our history. Thanks. Bye.